Thanks for getting us going, Lou. As you come into the room, if you could introduce yourselves in the chat by telling us your name, organizations, or district, or what institution you're joining from, and then share which emoji best describes how you feel about AI. And we'll get started in a few minutes. Alrighty, I think we have a good group going here. And so as people continue to come in, feel free to introduce yourselves, please. I love these curious emojis and the side eyes that I'm seeing. And when Brendon, our presenter today, introduces himself, maybe Brendon, tell us why you put the emoji with the cowboy hat. I'd love to know. I also enjoyed the like crossing the fingers one, like let's hope that this helps us do our work better. So thank you for sharing. Just looking through the chat here. Okay, great, we're getting to know each other. So with that, hi everyone, I'm Krista Morales. I'm Ripple's Network Engagement and Learning Manager. It's so great to have you all with us today. A couple of things before we get started, just so you all know how to interact with us in today's webinar. All of our webinars are recorded. It's currently being recorded right now. The recordings will be sent out to attendees and also registrants after the event, along with any of the supporting materials and things that we pop into the chat from today's session. You'll also get a quick feedback form that's going to help us improve our external webinars in the future. So we'd really appreciate it if and when that comes up on your screen, you take a few minutes to fill that out. So we encourage you to ask questions, but the caveat for that is we ask you to use the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen instead of the chat, just because we have a lot. We have right now about 100 plus folks in the room, so I don't want your question to get lost. So if you could, as the presentation is happening, if you could pop in any questions that you have in the Q&A function instead of the chat, that would be great. And then you can always upvote people's questions. And so when we get to the Q&A portion, if you have a similar question, we can kind of source the questions using those upvotes to see what is top of mind for people. So in the meantime, until we get to the Q&A portion, we encourage you to share comments, thoughts, and reflections in the chat throughout the presentation. And a last note, because we're currently in Zoom's webinar platform rather than like the classic meeting room, you are going to be muted and off camera for the entirety of the webinar. But if you would like to be unmuted and like you'd like to show your face, there's a request to do that, and our operations team will give you that chance when we get to the Q&A portion. All right, so now that we're done with the housekeeping items, I'm just going to turn it over to Brendon Krall from our research team at Brown University's Annenberg Institute, and also the person spearheading the Ripple's work with AI. So everyone give a warm welcome to Brendon. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you, Krista. And thank you everyone for joining. I've been enjoying reading the responses. I think it's awesome that we have a mix of individuals representing state and local education agencies, nonprofits, academic institutions, and a whole host of others. And so thank you all for joining. As you can see, there is a poll on your screen, and we'll get that started. But while I give my introduction, please feel free to fill that out and we'll debrief that. But as Krista mentioned, my name is Brendon Krall, and I'm a Ripple researcher at the Annenberg Institute at Brown University. Prior to joining Ripple, I earned my master's in public policy from the University of Chicago with concentrations in data analytics and policy analysis. But before that, I taught 8th grade English for 3 years in Houston, Texas. And these are some of the experiences I'm bringing to this work, and I'm excited to be here with you all today. So before jumping into the work, we wanted to begin with a poll to get a better understanding of who is in the room and folks' level of engagement with AI. For clarity's sake, when we mention AI, we mean the combination of hardware, algorithms, and data that creates what we think of as quote unquote intelligence. This can help in making decisions, discovering patterns, and taking actions. Take generative AI or Gen AI, for example. It's a type of machine learning that can generate all sorts of content like text, images, music, videos. And if we think back when OpenAI and ChatGPT came out onto the scene, they completely changed how we think about what AI can do. Suddenly, AI wasn't just for tech experts, it was something everyone could interact with. With tools like ChatGPT, we're seeing AI that can creatively respond to prompts and keep up an ongoing conversation. I know, Krista, you had asked me to share, and we asked everyone to share their responses for emojis. And the emoji that I put is a little cowboy hat. And the reason why I feel like that is because there's a lot of potential. And so there's a lot of opportunities with these new tools, but then there's also, it feels a little bit unrestrained. So like the Wild West. And we'll see that reflected in some of the findings of the report. I like seeing, or it's curious to see the mix. It seems like we have folks that are skeptical all the way down to excitement, which makes a lot of sense. And so I hope that throughout this presentation, there are going to be opportunities for folks to engage. So whether that be through the chat or through these polls or the opportunities to speak, we definitely want to encourage that, because I think the value from this work and this opportunity is to learn from each other. Awesome. So now we have the results. And so what type of organizations are you? It looks like the bulk of us are representing professional learning organizations, so more than 50%. We have a single advocacy organization, so hope for that individual to share their perspective whenever possible. A good host of research organizations, and then some funders and school districts. When we think about the level of investment, it looks like a good majority have already invested, so definitely bring in a wealth of experiences. I will say the report, we wrote it earlier in the year, and so things have changed a decent amount in the landscape. And so if there are additional things that you'd like to add, again, encourage that, and responding to the questions, submitting questions for the Q&A. We have 4 individuals that don't plan to invest, and so would love to hear your perspective as well. Does your org plan to collaborate with AI product developers and researchers in the future? We see a lot of definitely's and maybes, and then no. The 3 I'm assuming are also the ones that don't plan to invest. Okay, so that's a great kicking point. And thank you all for responding to that poll. I think it gives us a better sense of who's actually in the room participating in the conversation. And so thank you all for joining, and I'm going to continue going with the presentation, specifically outlining why we wrote this report. And so I want to start by sharing the motivation for why we embarked on this short cycle exploration. When we applied for the grant, we noticed that there has been far less attention to the ways that AI will change teachers' learning experiences. applications were more focused on student experiences. Yet these shifts were already happening. So AI developers are building systems to monitor classroom conversations and to provide direct and immediate feedback to teachers. Professional learning or PL provider organizations are broadening their support structures by experimenting with AI to scale up instructional coaching. Knowing this, we wanted to scan the Ripple landscape to understand the current trends and provide emerging guidance on integrating AI into PL for educators. Our purpose was twofold: to examine the current use of AI in teacher PL and to better understand how stakeholders perceive its potential future role in enriching teacher learning experiences. Our study draws on a range of interviews of a series of individuals working at the intersection of AI and PL. I want to make it clear we did not try to do an exhaustive scan of the field, but rather to build a broad sample across the range of individuals who are likely both to shape and to have their work shaped by the expansion of AI into the teacher learning space. So a bit more about our research method and sample. We began data collection in November of 2023, speaking first with professionals working for universities, ed tech companies, and PL service providers who were involved in the research and or development of AI tools for teacher PL. To identify study participants, we leveraged the Ripple network, reaching out to network members to consider participation and or recommend someone else. To be eligible to participate, interviewees were required to have direct involvement with AI-based initiatives that were being conducted in partnership with at least one school district. And the reason why we did this is because it ensured a line of sight into implementation on the ground. In addition to gathering data from AI developers and researchers, we also sought to understand the perspectives of the educators and leaders on the ground in districts. We therefore asked each AI developer or researcher we spoke with to connect us with their district partners so that we could explore the alignment between non-district and district personnel priorities. In sum, we conducted 35 interviews with 37 stakeholders, asking questions geared at getting answers to the following primary research questions. So question 1, how are organizations and districts currently using AI for teacher PL? Question 2 is what potential future applications do stakeholders see for AI in teacher PL? And then the third bucket was around what are the key challenges stakeholders are facing with regard to AI in teacher PL? Now, before I go over the specific findings, I want to provide a high-level overview of our learnings. So first, we found that the intersection between AI and PL looks very different across stakeholder groups. Frontline educators across the past year have been flooded with AI offerings designed to improve their efficiency in the classroom, including tools for generating lesson plans, for differentiating content, and for improving communication with students and parents. Among this group, the primary concern is how to create the learning experiences and the broader support structures within schools that ensure safe, high quality, and discerning use of the tools that already exist and those that will be developed in the coming years. Within this report, we refer to these types of PL as professional learning about AI. In contrast, the PL organization leaders and developers we spoke to see an as yet unrealized potential for AI to drive a new kind of teacher learning. This quote unquote professional learning with AI, which aims to directly shift teacher knowledge, is still in the early stages, but it brings its own set of advantages and challenges. Now that I've briefly set the stage, I will begin discussing our first set of findings, which we group under the umbrella PL about AI, a categorization that applies to any use of AI tools that are not directly designed to support teacher learning, but rather to support the tasks that teachers are responsible for completing. Despite most teachers and system leaders being more familiar with student applications of AI, we see clear of debates about student application of AI and instead focused on teacher use. Yet the conversation with these interview participants still tended toward a view of AI that emphasized its potential benefits in the realm of efficiency rather than learning or improvement. The teacher and system leaders that we spoke to had already felt the strong influence of AI in the classroom through the rapid proliferation of tools aimed at improving efficiency in the classroom. Interview participants emphasized a series of ways that they or others in their buildings were using AI tools to reduce the burden of time-heavy tasks in their day. These include generating course content, including supplemental materials that are designed to facilitate student engagement, differentiating and translating course materials to increase accessibility, diagnosing student needs to support data-driven instructional decisions, providing feedback on student work, and communicating with parents and family members regarding campus events or individual student progress. In addition to sharing these use cases, interview participants highlighted the need for 2 specific types of PL intended to support the effective use of AI to reduce teacher burden. The first type would broaden general AI literacy, addressing questions such as how does the technology work? What are its limitations? The second type would enable teachers to explore AI implementation, providing an overview of available tools and informing school or district level decisions about product implementation. And they're tackling questions such as, what are the available tools? What are the best practices for use? Now, in the chat, we were hoping that you'd be willing to share a response to the following 2 questions. So the first question is, how do these questions resonate with the work you're doing in your organization? And the second are, what are some of the best practices to support districts with addressing these concerns? We'll give about 3 or so minutes, and just go ahead and populate that in the chat, and then we'll continue our discussion. Krista, is it possible to add 1 to 2 more minutes on the timer, and we'll let more folks populate? I know these are bigger questions, and I'll just elevate some of the responses so far. Beth Helen writes, currently we're running a network of providers who are all looking at incorporating virtual tools to accelerate learning from within the instructional core. Several of the providers are including AI. Okay, we've seen this as well, and as a part of the evaluation work, we are capturing practices that will be shared openly. I cannot stress enough the need for these openly shared resources. I think that work is great, and I'd be very curious to learn more. George Wares shares a wondering of how AI would support with the new implementation of a math curriculum, and emphasizes also the impact of mindset and just overall feelings with the new initiatives. That's definitely a tension that we've seen and continue to think about. Sarah Murphy, glad to hear that these questions are strongly aligned with the work that Teaching Channel's pursuing. I think it's great that y'all are creating some professional development courses on AI literacy and the implementation of tools to support teacher workflow and instruction. very interested in seeing some of those resources. I know that that's been a call for some of our members as well as the districts that we've been partnering with. Sorry. Ooh, very interesting, Beth. Yeah, Beth wrote, we are currently asking questions around the best practices as well as how to reframe the conversation with districts around how they are thinking about deep personalization and the restructuring of instruction. I'd be curious to know what the reframing is. Yeah, Hoijong Sean. As an instructor, I feel that teacher educators need to support teachers in improving their AI literacy. We definitely believe that as well. However, there are not many existing resources like because AI technology is evolving so rapidly, the relevant policies and resources are still being developed. Absolutely agree with that statement. You'll see it reflected in the report as well. Andrew Lindsay, thank you for sharing your perspective as a Department of Education employee. And
Yeah, and I
then
want to
Andrew
hop in
continued.
really quick, Brendan, because one of our affiliate organizations, Sped Strategies, is elevating something we continue to hear also in our AI collab, which is like, how can AI help with equity and inequity? And so Adelaida, apologies if I'm mispronouncing your name, is asking how can we support educators in utilizing AI to provide effective support to students that align to their IEPs. So I think that's a great question. And just for the sake of time, I also want to say that use the chat and the folks in this room as a resource to you all. Also, just want to plug again the Q&A portion. If anything in the chat is making you think of a question, feel free to ask it and we'll save it towards the end of the presentation. Back to you, Brandon.
Thank you, Krista, for elevating that question. And I wouldn't say that we have a definitive answer. I think that that is something that we think about as far as, how can these tools either promote or reduce inequity. And so I think that's a particular application that's very, very relevant. And we'd be very curious to see how Sped Strategies is thinking about that question as well, because it's super important. I will say I'm really appreciating the level of engagement, and Krista, thank you for the encouragement again to engage in the Q&A, and also please, if conversations start to take place in the chat while the presentation goes, I think that's a win. Again, I think a lot of the value here is that we're creating this network of individuals that are engaging or grappling with these similar questions. And I think based off what I read, I think that it's great, or it's reaffirming that a lot of the questions that we have outlined in our report are consistent with some of the things that y'all are engaging with. And I think we'll continue to build on that, or build on this work, and hopefully we can work together to address some of these build on or additional questions that we have. So thank you for engaging in the chat, and for time's sake, I'm going to move on. So in addition to sharing these use cases, thank you for sharing your responses. And so the additional use cases that y'all shared are the questions that y'all are grappling with, but I wanted to also highlight some efforts by interview stakeholders to address these challenges. So particularly some of the districts that we had spoke with, some districts are creating a research action team of teachers, coaches, and district leaders charged with exploring, aligning, and introducing AI tools to teachers. So we saw this collaborative effort that's at multi-sections or multi-levels within the district to really start to think about this topic. We also heard of a district holding an AI-focused PD day that includes a plenary session to discuss AI and breakout sessions for teachers to engage at their level of comfort. And so we heard a lot of positive feedback around that particular initiative. And then additionally, some districts were building capacity among instructional coaches to provide one-on-one support for available tools. So these were different approaches to address some of these questions. I'm sure that there are wealth of other different strategies and approaches that individuals in this call could share. But we just wanted to elevate those based off the research that we had done early this year. Now I'm going to shift to the second set of findings, which we group under the umbrella AI for PL, a categorization that applies to any use of AI tools that are integrated into PL systems with the goal of supporting teacher learning. So that's the big difference here, is we're looking at tools that are actually going to support teacher or adult learning. For the leaders of PL organizations and for the AI developers that we spoke with, the promise for AI for teachers had less to do with the possibility of saving teacher time and more to do with the ways that AI could potentially enhance teacher skill by offering new ways to understand what was most effective in the classroom. And so we're seeing it as this measurement tool, this feedback tool, this data gathering tool that can help inform either the instructional or the professional development pipeline, or just overall things that are happening in the classroom to improve instructional practice. When we think about AI to support PL, we want to use this quote to frame our findings. So take a moment to read this quote from an interview with an AI developer. It will take about 45 seconds to a minute. Alrighty, so in addition to this vision, interview participants spoke about AI's use or potential use across several different functions within PL, including coaching, large and small group PL, and individualized PL plans. Stakeholders excitedly discussed the possibility of AI helping to provide widespread teacher-driven PL and the ways that new technology could help to scale, differentiate, and augment existing PL. The first use case can be summarized as tools that are meant to scale PL. So scaling professional learning, what we mean by that is, and just a bit of context, so given the time and resource constraints currently faced by many districts, AI could provide scalable, cost-efficient PL that may otherwise be unavailable or unsustainable. So some current uses from our sample were it was primarily focused around virtual coaching, so providing virtual support to more teachers and leveraging data to identify individual school or district needs. But in addition to that, there were some emerging uses, or the vision for the future was chatbot-supported PLCs, classroom simulations, and student work simulations. So these were applications that individuals were either currently working towards or had outlined as an area of further inquiry, all around how can we scale the existing PL structures. The second use case can be thought of as tools that are meant to differentiate PL. And so what we mean by differentiating professional learning is, and a bit of context is, while district-wide large group PL sessions are aligned to broader district priorities, district leaders and coaches noted the challenges in offering professional learning that is aligned to individual teacher needs. Leveraging AI to support coaches and teachers in designing and implementing professional learning plans is one way to address this challenge, allowing for more robust individualized learning plans for teachers. Some current uses, again, it was primarily focused around this virtual coaching, but there was this differentiation element or differentiating element where teachers were reflecting and identifying needs to personal needs to inform their coaching conversations. So it was very much grounded in that particular teacher's need, and some emerging uses that were outlined and highlighted were the development of individualized PL plans based on teacher feedback and goals. So a more individualized plan that's built around some parameters, but then it is catered to that individual learner's needs. And then there was an interesting application of a differentiated evaluation system. So teachers that were more veteran, they had additional options that were supplemented with AI resources rather than in-person PL opportunities given their experience and their needs. The third use case we heard can be thought of as tools that are meant to augment PL. And when we say augmenting professional learning, and just a bit of context, is district leaders, PL providers, and AI developers also noted the potential for AI to strengthen professional learning by providing additional points of entry and maximizing in-person time between teachers and coaches or facilitators. So we really think about that possibility of maximizing the time, getting the most out of what resources we already have. And so potentially unsurprisingly, the current use that we heard about with this under this bracket or bucket is also around virtual coaching. And it was providing a point of entry for teachers who might be apprehensive about being observed. So when we say, and a lot of the times when we say virtual coaching, what we mean by this is it's a platform where teachers or instructional coaches can upload video recordings of a classroom or some instructional practice. And it's really like a platform that will either help facilitate the conversation between the coach and the teacher, or facilitate some sort of reflection for the teacher themselves, rewatching the video and it prompting particular questions And so what we mean by this is providing a point of entry is that rather than the conventional instructional coach who's in the classroom observes, this provides an avenue for teachers to upload videos that they would like feedback on. So it takes away some of the requirements of actually being in person, and so it allows for this maximization of time. Some emerging uses was a chatbot supported Q&A during large group PL. So right, it's like it's this supplemental resource that people could engage with during these PL sessions. But then, and that was discussed. And then additionally, there was a discussion about virtual coaching or chatbot supported reflective practice to maximize in-person PLC time. So this again would just be like the teacher goes and engages with virtual coach or chatbot, does some reflection in preparation for an in-person meeting.
Yeah, and that should answer, Tina, I know you put it in the Q&A. Does the term virtual coaching refer to a human or like an AI app? Hopefully that answers your question, but if you have a follow-up, feel free.
Absolutely. Awesome. And so we want to make clear, or we want to share. Yeah, sorry, I was looking at the chat. Overall, interview participants were excited with a tinge of skepticism for the future that these technologies may enable. So I feel like what we shared in our with our emojis is pretty consistent with the sample that we engaged with. We felt like, I mean, in general, we want to acknowledge that most folks were a little bit more eager just because of our sampling process. We were looking for folks that were already engaging in initiatives, but there was still this tinge of skepticism. And so in addition to sharing all these use cases, they shared several challenges and concerns which we will dive into deeper in our third findings section. Tina, happy to summarize the answer. So when we say virtual coaches, what we mean by that is a platform that is powered by artificial intelligence or some predictive model that will likely, or at least one application that we saw with guiding teachers through a reflection process based off a video that they submitted. So it is like the individuals engaging with the technology themselves, not necessarily a platform for teachers and coaches to work on. But that could also be a function or a factor of the system itself. But moving along, so diving into the challenges and concerns, while interview subjects differed on the uses they saw as central when they considered the intersection of AI and PL, they shared a very similar view of the primary concerns and key questions that educators, PL leaders, policymakers, and developers would need to take on for AI to be deployed in ways that lead to genuine and equitable classroom improvement. The first bucket we identified pertains to the broader landscape, which we are calling systemic challenges. Overwhelmingly, all stakeholders named the ambiguous legal landscape as a major concern. In particular, educators need better guardrails outlining the do's and don'ts regarding AI tools and data practices involving teacher and student identifiable information. As one PL provider put it, what are some reasonable guidelines? It's really hard to come up with guidelines for something that's emerging and changing so fast because you don't really know where the guardrail should be, because you don't know what the next generation is going to be tomorrow, next week, or next month, which I saw a little bit reflected in some of the responses that I read. And in addition, along with the legal concern, the lack of evidence showing the demonstrated impact of any of these specific tools on adult learning was mentioned time and time again, highlighting that more studies are required. This poses a pressing challenge because the body of evidence is missing, creating a greater sense of uncertainty regarding the utility of some AI PL products. We think it's important to adhere to one PL provider's advice as these tools continue to make it to the market. District leaders need to be slow, thoughtful, and strategic, and ensure that the tool is supporting a fleshed out theory of change. If we take the lessons from 15 years ago, you don't just put the product in front of the user. Now, in the second bucket of challenges are more to do with individual systems and users and can be thought of as context-specific challenges. The first is that districts face unique barriers to adoption. Stakeholders raise concerns about adopting and implementing AI tools, highlighting barriers such as limited resource access, financial limitations, and a lack of awareness regarding AI initiatives. One district leader stated, people are thinking about AI tools financially, but they might not also necessarily be thinking about it in terms of the effectiveness and the uptake of the training, emphasizing that it's not only about funds. The second context-specific challenge is that users don't know which tools to select, and stakeholders are grappling with uncertainty when it comes to selecting AI tools that not only save time, but also align with best use policies and support adult learning. Underscoring the challenge is the observation that tech providers often are not incentivized to provide real data or evidence backing their impact or their effectiveness, especially not for these different groups, which creates a market environment with questionable tools. And that's that's one reason, again, why I put the little cowboy hat. Finally, as expected, the issue of time continues to persist, and there's a tension between the different stakeholders regarding how much engagement district personnel should have. So the AI developers and researchers that we spoke to want more time, but teachers continuously emphasize that they're overburdened, and it's a little bit overwhelming to think about about these new initiatives, especially around these tools that are pretty new and a lot of folks are uncertain about. One teacher shared their experience with tech and PL. They said so many times there's professional development where we learn a tool and then given something and said, great, go make it work. And then like I have to go teach kids in like 5 minutes. You don't have that time to make it work. And then it just gets pushed to the side, collects dust, and then you don't end up using it. So this is providing an example of what not to do when thinking about integrating these technologies. Since we shared the key challenges of our sample, from our sample, we want to ask which challenges resonate most with you. So we're going to launch another poll. Let us know which of the challenges we named are the biggest barrier to your organization's adoption of AI. And if you're just beginning your AI journey, which of the challenge do you anticipate will be most difficult for your organization? So we'll take about 1 minute to respond, a few minutes to debrief. And as we wait for responses, be sure to add any questions that you may have to the Q&A. We're still waiting on a few folks to respond. And again, oh, awesome, we got it. So I see a relatively even distribution around the challenges that folks are experiencing. We see about 25% of the sample, it would name the legal environment or the lack of guardrails. We see that some folks are engaging with districts and trying to overcome those unique barriers. The largest, or not the largest percentage, but I was going to say a large percentage, users don't know which tools to select, and then we see personnel are time constrained and AI's impact on adult learning and its interactions with other areas are understudied. And so we see this distribution. I'd be curious to know, how is this broken down by stakeholder? I could definitely draw some inferences about maybe which stakeholders are grappling with which challenges. But this is really helpful information for us to understand how we want to prioritize our efforts at Ripple, and then also to understand how we can support folks with starting to overcome some of these. I'm also curious, and I'll just ask if there are challenges that were not reflected that you would say is actually your highest challenge, please populate that in the chat. I think that's helpful for us to know as well as we continue to think about how we can support in this work and us being Ripple. So thank you all for that response. And What we'll focus on now is the implications and next steps. So we have these findings from the report, and now we want to share how we're thinking about this at Ripple. So again, I want to state, having a better understanding of the key challenges that stakeholders at different levels are experiencing helps provide a roadmap on suggested next steps to effectively, efficiently, and equitably adopt these new tools. We believe that AI has the potential to transform the future of professional learning, but we are a long way from using it to genuinely improve learning opportunities for teachers and students. We want to share what will it take to get there. We've broken down the implications down by key stakeholders, and so I'm just gonna we have these bullet points with more concise, more streamlinable outline of what we suggest for each type of stakeholder, and then I'll voice over a little bit what more high level summary. So policymakers, through their engagement with education stakeholders and development of clear ethical guidelines, will need to alleviate concerns surrounding data privacy and algorithm transparency. So those are the two biggest areas mentioned from the various stakeholders. Fostering an environment of trust and clarity, right? We want to build this environment so folks are engaging with these tools and not concerned about what's taking place. District leaders, by dedicating structured time for AI literacy initiatives, aligning technology with PL infrastructure, and fostering collaborative partnership, will need to mitigate time constraints, enhance decision-making, and promote sustainable data-driven PL practices. And then for AI developers, guided by principles of ethical AI design and a focus on grounded learning science, will need to address concerns about the impact, effectiveness, potential biases, equitable access to AI tools, ensuring responsible innovation and support for teacher learning. We also have some recommendations for researchers, PL organization providers, and funders. So researchers working in genuine research practice partnerships will need to build an evidence base for effective and equitable implementation defined by a deeper understanding of the complementary roles of AI-driven PL tools and teacher and coach expertise. PL provider organizations, through their facilitation of sustained partnership, dissemination of best practices and learning, and strategic, thoughtful implementation, will need to offer valuable support, resources, and guidance to districts, promoting effective, equitable, and sustainable AI integration in PL. And lastly, but definitely not least, our funders, by prioritizing initiatives that promote equitable access, financial support, and collaborative research partnerships, will need to address barriers to AI adoption, fostering an inclusive and supportive ecosystem for AI-driven PL innovations. Yeah, so as you see, we believe that everyone has a role. I will note we didn't want to center educators in this work just because we believe that educators, in the sense that we don't want to put the implications or next steps on classroom teachers because they're already so overburdened. So we wanted to focus more of our implications around the other staff and individuals that are supporting the work that they do. Lou Matthews, right? Not potential biases, actual biases. That is fair to claim. And then Sarah Murphy, thank you for emphasizing, right? That data privacy issue is huge. The recent news about LAUSD and their ed chatbot feels like a cautionary tale. Absolutely. Thank you, Lou, for adding a little bit more information, right? If we operate under the assumption that there is inherent bias, then we can, address that or weed that out, or I'd study that more. So in the envisioned future, the challenges and concerns surrounding AI use in teacher professional learning would be systematically addressed, paving the way for a more informed, inclusive, and effective approach to PL that leverages the benefits of AI while respecting the unique contribution and needs of educators. So that, in addition to taking, learning from these cautionary tales or the other experiences that districts or organizations are having, we hope to shape the future and create a better space for utilizing these tools. I see that, sorry, some other folks were sharing challenges. This is a super active chat. I'm very grateful for that. I think that there's a wealth of information and I wish I could address it further. But we're going to move forward for the amount of time. And we wanted to share also what's next for Ripple. So this slide is more of a short-term strategy. What are we focused on? What have we done? And so the bulk of this work, we look at this circle to the left of Ripple's AI focus. We see that the report is framed, and what we want to emphasize is this report was more or less the introduction to our work. So we wanted to start with this landscape analysis, understand where members were at, and then share these learnings with our broader network. In addition to that, though, we're looking for additional ways to continue the conversation and actually support some of the work. And so what we've been running is we have a collab, and what this collab is it's a group of 15 Affiliate Plus members plus myself and Krista, and we're meeting once a month for the next 4 months, just to continue to understand how the landscape is evolving and what particular needs and challenges do our members have/face, and how can we support that. And then in addition to these two like more internal work streams, in addition, what Ripple has done is we've funded 3 AI contributing studies. So these are studies that are starting to address some of the questions and concerns that we've outlined in the report, but then also that these external researchers have identified with their partners. And these partners typically are, it will be an academic institution, and it will be some district, and then additionally, oftentimes a PL provider. So these are some of the these are things that are taking place now. Beth Holland, thank you for asking the question. Is it possible to become part of your AI collab? I'm going to actually kick that to Krista. I believe because of how, oh, sorry, go ahead, Krista.
You can put my email in the chat if anyone wants to connect more.
Thank you. And so in addition to that short-term strategy, what we also wanted to highlight is what we're thinking about long-term. And Krista put her email in the chat. So to begin, just for time's sake, I'll read over kind of what we're thinking about investigating, and what we're focusing on with regards to the intersection between AI and teacher PL. So I'll read the high-level overview, and then we'll bring it to our Q&A. So the first bit that Ripple is focused on, and this is broadly, is we want to investigate the impact of AI on adult learning. So understanding the effectiveness of AI tools in supporting adult learners across various contexts. And this is really just so that we can assess the true impact of AI on professional learning outcomes. Another bucket is balancing AI benefits with human involvement. So exploring the role of teachers and coaches in AI-driven professional development. We've heard a lot of calls for that, and we want to elevate that call that AI should be used in tandem with professionals. We don't want to obviate the professionals or the value or the knowledge that they have. And we really want to emphasize the importance of human interaction in learning experiences. We also want to address concerns over reliance on AI. So we'll examine the risk of AI-driven platforms supplanting traditional professional learning methods, and we're developing strategies to mitigate over reliance, especially in underserved communities. We also are thinking about evaluating AI bias and equity, so assessing the potential or just the biases embedded in AI tools and platforms, and implementing equity audits to ensure fairness and equity in AI-driven professional learning. And then the last thing that we're working on is we're thinking about ongoing reporting, so reporting our findings and insights across the network in real time. So the report could serve as an example of that, kind of the kickoff. But then we're also going to where our goal is to conduct regular scans of technology adoption within our network to keep pace with the rapidly changing landscape. So that was a lot. Thank you all for your participation throughout the chat and engagement. And now we're going to transition to Q&A. So you can either populate the questions in the Q&A chat. I see that there is one, or you can raise your hand and a member of our ops team will spotlight you and you can voice it over. But given that there is a question, I shall start with that. So there seems to be a sense that AI tools support personalization. Are there any thoughts and or lessons learned about how AI may support collaboration in PL, not just between a teacher and a coach? So I can share my perspective and some things that I've seen, but I also want to open this up to the group. I think that I'm sure there are plenty of other applications. As far as the stakeholders that we spoke with, I don't specifically recall any application of AI tools being used to support this collaboration in an in-person environment. It was primarily focused on interactions between teacher and coaches. But I think that a lot of those tools or just capabilities are transferable to the type of engagement that you outlined, Kristen. Whether it be some sort of like it could be a decision-making process if you were thinking about how to structure a breakout group, and if you wanted to use some tools to kind of auto generate those groups. I think that is one potential application, and that would be used more for the planning of the actual opportunity. But there was also, or I've heard about how PLCs, so professional learning communities that teachers participate in, they are supposed to be designed to tackle particular challenges that teachers or educators are experiencing. But what we've seen also, or what I've seen personally, is that there have been like further breakout groups within these sort of learning structures that are designed or that are prepared again by the AI. So if you're experiencing particular learning needs, then that the AI could help break you into an even smaller PLC. But I'm curious to know if that answered your question or if you had additional thoughts. I will also name that this is completely exploratory or more just kind of going off what I've seen, not necessarily reflected in the report. Thank you, Nick, for sharing. So Nick Lundberg said, we're finding that as a result of participating in a virtual coach AI session, teacher collaboration can be richer as they discuss their learning within the PL structure. Okay, so again, kind of thinking about, how can these systems maximize the time or improve those in-person sessions? Thank you, Nick, for jumping in.
Maybe as we wait for folks to type in their questions, we could go back to the other challenges that people said weren't on our list, but they
Thank you, Krista. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Do you happen to have those located?
Yep. Carolyn Higgins says another challenge is that it is a moving target as new tools are developed. And then David Baker says a challenge is that teachers at all levels need to understand and be able to use AI in some way. They need to know how to use them, when to use them as a professional, and also with students. Like, what are the legal issues, best practices, things like that. And then Heather and also Lou echoed Heather's comment, which is a challenge about coherence. So adopting new tools and strategies on top of a culture of systems that are already challenging belonging environments is key. So like, how can AI development and adoption be built upon a foundation of connection, equity, and inclusivity? I think is a great question for our collab. Maybe we pose that.
Absolutely. And I see there's a response from Kristen. Thank you for weighing in on my question. I'm curious about the landscape and collaboration, as that is often key to growth in skills and knowledge mobilization. When you say you're curious about the landscape and collaboration, what are you curious about? I think one thing that we've thought about, especially in this landscape and all the different stakeholders that are moving at different speeds, we found a lot of value in really just, the collab itself, and then again, these opportunities to engage with individuals that we don't engage with on our day-to-day to just discuss what are some challenges and strategies to address those challenges, because there's a lot of learning taking place in these potentially siloed buckets. Yeah, and Chris has shared, right? That's also something that we think about. And so go ahead, Krista.
Gave Kirsten the opportunity to unmute, so.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the invitation, Kirsten Daler from West Ed. And as I've been thinking about teacher professional learning over over many decades, and I think about where there's an evidence base to learning, and I think about my own practice as a teacher and where I grew the most. The power of collaboration, peer-to-peer collaboration, I think is just critical. And so I've been thinking a lot about like where can AI either help people, help group people, or help to identify resources that are useful to a group. And so rather than AI being the kind of approach that leads to more and more compartmentalization and personalization as the like the only outcome or the primary outcome, I'm looking for ways in which AI might support increased collaboration, peer-to-peer. So that's what's behind my question, and I'm just curious, if others have been thinking in that space, or what we know, or if there's ways in which we can think about some lessons learned, and even within our own research communities, to think about how can we mine what works clearinghouse studies about professional learning, and then think about the value of using AI to do that, to then help us further the field. So those are some thoughts. Interested in other people's ideas. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kristen. And I will leave that to the chat. Yeah, please engage with that question. I will say also, I know it's not answering your question directly, but I think that one cool thing about this, this fast-pacing environment or this landscape is, while it would be great to have, I want to make it clear, it'd be great for these guardrails to be in place and the legal landscape to be a little bit more fleshed out. But because of that uncertainty, we were able to look at some states that were doing interesting things. So, for example, Washington State put together a committee to explore how AI could be used, and I don't have all the details outlined, so apologies if that's not fully clear. But one thing that we had heard about there were teachers across the state that we're starting to form these professional learning committees to start talking about AI. And so I know it's not exactly what you're saying, Kristen, of how can AI identify or kind of build these groups together, but it's kind of similar in that these teachers representing different districts and at different grade levels or subjects were coming together to think about this tool. And so kind of like a reverse application. But thank you for coming off to share that. And then Beth Holland asked, could you talk a bit more about what you're doing with the collab? Absolutely, yeah. So the collab, oh, thank you, Krista, yeah, for sharing it. I'll just voice it over. So Ripple's collab goals, there are 2 of them. The first is understand how tools are currently being used or can be used to support teacher learning, and identify common problems of practice that we can collectively address. So this is very similar to what we embarked on with our report. But we want to continuously update this because we know that the landscape is moving so fast, and the group of individuals that we were working with are also thinking of additional ways that weren't reflected. But the second goal is, and it's a newer goal, is we want to understand how current professional learning supports for implementing AI tools, what they are, and then identify examples of organizations partnering with districts to create AI knowledge infrastructure. So it's kind of addressing some of those PL about AI questions. And then Beth, if there are any other particular questions, I'm happy to, or Heather, or anyone really, I'm happy to further elaborate or address those.
Yeah, and as people are connecting in the chat, I'm looking at the time, and I just want to thank you all for joining us today, and a huge thank you, of course, to Brendon for starting this conversation about AI in the PL field. Excited to continue this work. On your way out, please let us know what you thought of today's webinar by answering our feedback survey. It'll pop out after you exit the webinar. If you do want to connect, I put my email there. It's on the screen for you. I can also share Brendon's email if you connect with me. And if you want to stay abreast of our work, please sign up for our Ripple newsletter or connect with us on LinkedIn and or Twitter/X. But other than that, thank you all so much for joining us. Excited to continue this work, and hopefully we see you all again.
Yes, thank you all so much for engaging. I think Kristen put it best as far as how I'm feeling. I really appreciate the opportunity to continue learning together, and thank you for engaging.